What if the man cutting your hair for free at the market was actually choosing who would die before morning? Welcome to Royal Beat Tales. If you are just seeing us for the first time, please subscribe, like, and comment for more unique stories. Dennis was a kind young man who lived in the city of Aba in eastern Nigeria. He was only 28 years old. One day, a terrible thing happened to him in the busy open market. Someone sneaked a stolen item into Dennis's hands and suddenly shouted that he was a thief. In moments, angry people in the market gathered around him, believing the lie. They did not listen to Dennis's pleas. They beat him badly in their anger. Before a few minutes passed, Dennis lay still on the ground. They had beaten the life out of him, and he died that day. But even as his body grew cold, something dark and angry woke up inside him. His spirit could not rest because of the wrong done to him. No one knew it yet, but Dennis's soul stayed behind, full of pain and anger, waiting for revenge. Years later, a new barber shop opened in that same town. The barber's name was Dennis. He looked like an ordinary young man with a bright smile. Every day, people crowded into his little shop to get a haircut. Dennis was very friendly and loved cutting hair. He played happy music on his radio and joked with his customers. He cut everyone's hair for free, never charging a single coin. People thought he was just generous and loved his work. They said this was why he cut hair for free, because it made him happy. His shop was clean and comfortable, with a big mirror and a red barber's chair. Dennis would smile and laugh with the customers, making them feel at ease. But behind Dennis's warm smile was a deep secret and a cold plan for revenge that no one could see. Every day, many men and boys came for free haircuts. They trusted Dennis because he was kind and the shop felt safe. Dennis carefully swept up the hair from the floor after each cut and kept the bits of hair. No one paid much attention to this. They thought he was just keeping the shop tidy. But Dennis had a secret purpose for every single strand of hair he collected. Each piece of hair gave him power over the person it came from, and this gave Dennis a dark feeling of control that he hid behind his grin. When Dennis touched someone's hair, he quietly whispered something that nobody else heard. It was an eerie promise, a quiet curse. Dennis's eyes would flash with a strange light for just a second, but then he would laugh it off as if nothing happened. The customers never noticed this quick change. They left the shop with a fresh haircut and a smile, thanking him for his kindness. They never guessed that by nightfall, those very hairs could be used to find them. Dennis watched each customer go, knowing that when darkness came, he would visit them in a different form and they would soon face a nightmare. During the day, Dennis was the cheerful barber. But as night fell and the town became quiet, Dennis changed. Under the cover of darkness, Dennis's spirit left the barber shop to hunt. He no longer looked human. He took the shape of a large black crow with shining eyes. This crow was bigger than a normal bird and moved in an odd, frightening way. When the moon was high, the crow would fly out into the night. It flew over the sleeping town with silent wings. With each customer's hair, Dennis's spirit could sense where that person was. He went after the men whose hair he had cut that day. One by one, he would find their homes by some mysterious pull of the hairs he kept. In the still of the night, a dark crow silently sought out its first victim, gliding through the moonlight as an omen of death. On one such night, a man named Emeka slept in his small house after getting a free haircut that morning. Outside, on his roof, the black crow quietly landed. Emeka woke up with a chill, sensing something was not right. He heard a soft scratching sound on the roof. With a trembling hand, he lit a lantern and looked around, but he saw nothing inside his room. The sound grew silent, and Emeka tried to calm his pounding heart. He told himself it was just the wind. He did not know that a pair of glowing eyes were watching him from the darkness just above, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Suddenly, the crow let out a single low croak. Emika's heart skipped a beat at the unnatural sound. He slowly looked toward the small window. There, on the ledge, sat a huge black crow staring straight at him. Its eyes shone like two red coals. Emika felt frozen in fear as those eyes bore into him. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. A terrible cold feeling gripped his body. At that very moment, as the crow locked eyes with him, Emika's body went limp and he fell lifeless to the floor, becoming yet another silent victim of the vengeful spirit. By dawn, the town buzzed with shocking news. Emika was found dead in his home without any sign of illness or injury. He was a young, healthy man the day before. People whispered in fear and confusion. This was not the first strange death. Every morning it seemed like they heard about one more man found dead in his sleep. In the past week alone, 5 or 6 men had died suddenly in the night. All of them had been perfectly fine during the day. Neighbors started saying that maybe an evil spirit or curse was in the town. Some pointed out something odd. Many of the men who died had recently gotten free haircuts from the new barber, Dennis. It seemed like a strange coincidence, but nobody had proof of anything. Despite their suspicions, the people were frightened and could feel a shadow of danger hanging over the town each night. Men who had visited Dennis's shop began to feel uneasy. Some of them decided not to go out at night or to pray extra hard before sleeping. A few even avoided the barber shop now, despite Dennis's friendly calls for them to come in for a trim. Still, many others thought, how could a kind barber cause any harm? He is so nice and gentle. They dismissed the fear as silly rumors. Dennis continued to smile at everyone during the day, acting as if nothing was wrong. He greeted passers-by warmly and even handed candy to children who skipped by his shop. But each night, when the town's lights went out, families huddled in fear, not knowing who would be the next to not see the morning sun. One bright afternoon, an older man named Mr. Okiki walked into Dennis's shop for a haircut. As Dennis cheerfully trimmed the man's hair, Mr. Okiki kept frowning at the mirror. He had heard the whispers around town. He knew many of the dead men had visited this shop. While Dennis chatted about the weather, Mr. Okiki's mind was busy with worry. Why would someone give free haircuts every day? What did Dennis want in return? It was not normal in their town for anyone to do so much work for free. When Dennis finished and brushed off the loose hair, Mr. Okiki stood up slowly. Instead of thanking Dennis, he turned and faced him with a hard stare. The air in the shop grew tense, and a sense of challenge hung between the two men as silence fell in the small room. Mr. Okiki pointed a finger at Dennis and spoke in a loud, angry voice. "I do not trust you," he said. The words rang in the little shop. A few other customers waiting in line looked up in surprise. No one had ever spoken to the friendly barber like that before. "How can you cut people's hair for free every day?" Mr. Okeki continued, his voice sharp with suspicion. "No one does that without a reason. You have not told us why you are here in our town or what your true purpose is." The room fell completely silent. Dennis's usual smile slowly faded, and something cold flickered in his eyes. For a moment he looked at Mr. Okiki with a gaze that made the old man step back. But then, just as quickly, Dennis chuckled softly and shrugged. He tried to lighten the mood by saying, "I just like to cut hair and make people happy, sir. There is no bad reason." He even gave a wide grin. Some of the other customers laughed nervously, unsure what to think. Mr. Okiki narrowed his eyes. He felt in his bones that something was off. He left the shop uneasy, not knowing he had just sealed his fate with his bold challenge. That night, Mr. Okiki could not sleep well. He tossed and turned on his bed, thinking about the barber's strange smile. The house was very quiet. Outside, the wind was still. Near midnight, Mr. Okeki thought he heard a rustling sound at his window. He sat up and peered into the darkness, but he could only see the faint outline of the tree outside. Telling himself it was nothing, he lay back down. His heart was beating fast because he felt as if unseen eyes were watching him. The old man did not know that an even greater terror was gathering just above his roof, preparing to strike when he least expected. In the darkest hour of the night, not just one, but several black crows appeared out of the sky. They flocked onto Mr. Okiki's rooftop without a single caw. Their wings made a soft flapping noise that grew and then became still. Then one crow tapped its beak on the window, making a sharp click, click, click sound. Mr. Okiki woke with a jolt at the sudden noise. His room was pitch dark except for a dim moonbeam. With shaking hands, he reached for a lantern and lit it. The light chased some shadows away, and he slowly walked toward the window. He could hear faint scratching and thuds from outside, like claws scraping wood. Gathering courage, Mr. Okiki pulled the curtain aside and lifted the lantern to see. His eyes widened in horror at the sight that greeted him. Countless red eyes and dark shapes perched all over the window and roof, watching him with silent, deadly intent. Before Mr. Okeke could even scream, the window shattered as multiple crows came crashing through. They swirled around the room in a frenzy of black wings. The lantern's flame blew out, leaving him in darkness with the beating of wings and razor-sharp claws. The old man's screams finally filled the air, loud and full of fear. Neighbors heard the cries but were too afraid to rush in at night. They peeped through their own windows, trembling and praying. Inside Mr. Okiki's house, the noise of flapping wings suddenly stopped. The screaming stopped too. In the eerie silence that followed, one crow flew out of the broken window and disappeared into the night sky. Then another, and another, until all the crows were gone as if they had never been there. By the time dawn arrived, Mr. Okiki's house was quiet, and the man inside was dead, with fear frozen on his face, becoming the latest victim of the barber's wrath. The next morning the sun rose over Aba, but the town's mood was darker than ever. News spread quickly that Mr. Okiki had died in the night, under strange and frightening circumstances. People whispered that neighbors had heard him screaming and strange sounds like birds in his house. No one could explain how a healthy man just died like that. Now the pattern was clear to many. Every person who had confronted or doubted Dennis, the barber, ended up dead by morning. The townsfolk were scared and also angry. They felt there was an evil in their midst. Many of them refused to go near Dennis's shop now. That morning, Dennis stood in his shop as usual, but not a single customer came to sit in his red barber chair. The place that was once lively and full of chatter was silent and empty. Dennis quietly swept the floor that was already clean. He looked up at the doorway and street from time to time, seeing people hurry by without stopping. Some even crossed the street to avoid walking in front of his shop. Dennis's pleasant grin slowly turned into a hard frown as he realized the town was starting to fear him, yet that fear also meant his secret was on the verge of being exposed. Later that day, as Dennis leaned against his shop door, a young man named Chidy marched up to him with anger in his eyes. Chidy's voice rang out loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "The man who argued with you yesterday is dead. We all know it now. You are evil," he accused Dennis with a shaking voice, full of pain and fury. Chidy was Mr. Okeke's nephew, and he had loved his uncle dearly. Tears of rage were in his eyes as he pointed at Dennis, blaming him for the tragedy. A few people gathered at a distance to watch the confrontation, their faces filled with fear and curiosity. Dennis stared at Chidy, saying nothing, his face strangely calm. But behind that calm, Dennis's eyes were cold. A couple of other men stepped forward and pulled Chidy back gently, worried that Dennis might lash out or curse him right there. The air was thick with tension. Dennis quietly went back into his shop and shut the door without a word. Outside, the people felt a storm was brewing, and they knew that something had to be done about the mysterious barber before more lives were lost. As evening approached, the people of the town gathered in the main market square. They talked in worried voices about all the deaths that had happened since the free barber arrived. Mothers held their children close, and fathers clenched their fists, angry and afraid. They shared every strange thing they had noticed. How Dennis arrived in town out of nowhere, how every death seemed to follow a visit to his shop, and how Mr. Okiki had openly challenged him and then died horribly that same night. The pieces were coming together in everyone's minds. By the light of the setting sun, the fear in their hearts turned into rage. They decided they could not wait for more innocent people to die. A group of men formed a crowd, and more people joined behind, carrying lanterns, sticks, and stones. They were determined to confront Dennis and drive out the evil once and for all. As the sky grew orange and then dark, the crowd moved as one toward the barber shop, their fear mixing with anger, ready to face the horror that lurked among them. They reached Dennis's shop just as the last light of day faded. The door was closed, but a dull lamp glowed inside through the window. One man banged on the door hard. "Dennis, come out here now," he shouted. Others added their voices, yelling for Dennis to show himself. After a moment of silence, the door creaked open. Dennis stepped out slowly onto the threshold of his shop. He looked at the mob calmly, but there was a strange smirk on his face. The crowd of people surrounded him, yelling accusations. "Why are people dying after visiting you?" one woman cried out. "What have you done to our town?" a man shouted. "Witch! Evil spirit!" another voice yelled from the back. They were now convinced Dennis was behind the supernatural deaths. A few men grabbed Dennis by the arms roughly and dragged him out into the open street. They were shaking with anger and fear. Some in the crowd picked up stones, ready to throw if Dennis tried anything. It was a chaotic scene as more people pressed in. They thought they had cornered the evil, but none of them were prepared for what Dennis would do next under the cover of the darkening night. Held by strong hands in the middle of the angry crowd, Dennis still did not beg or fight. Instead, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. At first, it was a soft chuckle that made those nearest to him feel a chill. Then the laugh grew louder and louder, bursting into the night air. It was not a happy laugh at all, but a sound so cruel and cold that it sent shivers down every spine. The laughter echoed off the walls of the nearby market stalls. People had to cover their ears because the sound hurt them. It was as if the laughter was inside their heads, pounding like a drum. Some stepped back in fear and confusion. The men holding Dennis's arms loosened their grip, shocked by the unearthly laugh coming from him. Dennis threw his head back as he laughed, and in the dim lantern light his eyes gleamed a fiery red. Those who saw it gasped and stumbled away. What they were hearing was not a normal man's laugh, but the howl of a vengeful spirit revealing itself, and terror began to grip the mob as they realized they were not dealing with a human at all. Without warning, right in front of the crowd's unbelieving eyes, Dennis's shape began to change. His laughing mouth stretched and twisted. His arms became long black wings. His face and body shrank and shifted until he was no longer a man at all. Within seconds, a huge black crow stood where Dennis had been. It was as tall as a child, with shiny feathers and burning red eyes. The crow let out a piercing caw. The sound was so sharp and haunting that a few people screamed. In an instant, the giant crow flapped its powerful wings and rose into the air. The crowd ducked and scattered, some falling over each other in their panic. The ones who had grabbed Dennis now stumbled back in shock, their faces white with fear. The crow that was Dennis flew in a circle above them once, its red eyes glaring down. For a moment it seemed to look at each person in the crowd, as if marking them. With another strong flap, the crow flew higher and then darted away into the darkness beyond the market. The people below were left in stunned silence. The evil barber had revealed his true form, and now he had slipped from their grasp, leaving them trembling in the street and afraid of what would happen next. Everyone ran to their homes in terror after Dennis vanished into the night sky. Mothers grabbed their children, and fathers barred their doors. They feared that the huge crow might return to attack them all. The town fell into a tense, fearful quiet. That night felt longer than any night the people could remember. Every creak of wood or whistle of wind made families jump in fear. No one dared to sleep. They sat awake, holding hands and praying for morning. But while the town hid in fear, Dennis's spirit was not done. His anger had grown even more, and he was about to unleash a final act of revenge that would haunt the town forever. In the darkest hour before dawn, a glow of orange light suddenly lit up the sky. One of the largest markets in Aba, the very place where Dennis had been falsely accused and killed years ago, was on fire. Bright flames danced and devoured the wooden stalls and shops, crackling loudly. The fire spread quickly from one shop to the next, fueled by the dry goods and fabrics sold in the market. People woke up to the smell of smoke and the sound of a great whoosh and pop of burning wood. They stepped outside and saw the horror. The market was being destroyed by a raging fire. Many rushed out with buckets of water, trying to stop the flames, but it was too late. The fire was too big and too fierce. All they could do was watch in despair. High above the flames, dark shapes circled in the smoky sky. A flock of black crows flew around and around, their silhouettes passing in front of the fiery glow of the inferno, as if celebrating the destruction below. Some people fell to their knees, crying as they saw their shops and livelihoods burn to ashes. Others just stood with their hands on their heads, tears in their eyes, unable to believe what was happening. By the time the sun began to rise, the famous market of Aba was gone, reduced to charred wood and ash. Miraculously, no person was killed by the fire because it started in the empty hours of the night, but the damage was devastating. As the crowd gathered around the smoking ruins in the morning, they murmured among themselves, trying to understand the cause of this disaster. A few whispered that they had seen crows flying in the smoke, and that it must be the work of the evil barber's spirit. Many refused to go near the ruins, afraid that Dennis's ghost still lurked there. They had no proof and no clear answers, only the fear in their hearts and the dreadful understanding that something beyond human had brought this fate upon their town. The barber shop on the corner of the street remained empty. Inside, the red barber's chair sat silently gathering dust. No one ever opened that shop again. Some say Dennis's ghost might still linger there. The town never again had a free barber or anyone who dared to collect people's hair. The people of Aba learned to be careful of who they trust and to think twice before acting in anger. They would always remember the tale of the friendly barber with the deadly secret. It became a story told to children so they would know that bad deeds and injustice can create terrible ghosts. And so, the story of Dennis, the vengeful barber who turned into a crow, lived on in whispers and shivers, reminding everyone that some spirits, once broken, will not rest until they have revenge. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment for more unique stories.